All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Agent Experience, where we tell the stories behind the agents. My name is Alan Lozano with the Property Hermanos Group. I am your host, and today it is my absolute pleasure to bring on Mr. Josh Gamble, Realtor Extraordinaire, originally from Washington State, but now he's living in San Antonio, working in San Antonio. And Josh comes to us from the food and beverage industry, which is super awesome. I always love hearing the stories of people that come from the service industry into real estate. And he was working in the food and beverage industry for over 20 years. But the other thing that's cool about Josh, he's also a fantastic, very accomplished musician, played with a band called Feral Children, and he's still jamming and keeping the music alive. So he's been in real estate for 3 years. Favorite food is tacos. So I guess from Washington, he's come to Texas, and you can't go wrong with tacos here in Texas. And the other cool thing, Josh is also an accredited buyer representative, a military relocation professional, and a pricing strategy advisor through the National Association of Realtors. So very intelligent, accomplished realtor. And the other thing that I love about Josh is he loves to give back to his military and veteran community. He is a Homes for Heroes affiliate. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on Mr. Josh Gamble with the Gamble Realty Group. What's going on, Josh? How are you doing today?
Hey, Al, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great. Yeah, man. Thank you for being here. So, Josh, real quick before we jump in, tell us a little bit how the transition has been going from the food and beverage industry into real estate. Are there some similarities? Are there some things that are transitioning well, some things that are not really the same? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question to start out with. How I got into real estate was really, I felt it was an evolution from the service industry. I had customers in those days, regulars, who were like, you know what, man, you're pretty good at taking care of other people. Have you ever thought about changing your product? And I'm like, no. I served beers and eventually martinis, Manhattans, and that's what I did. I'm like, no, this is how I make money. But eventually, I got in my head that, yeah, I could swap out the product and just continue taking care of people. So that hasn't changed. You're still building an experience for people. You're still listening to people to know how you can better serve them. You're still anticipating needs. And so that hasn't changed. Now, where the big change that I noticed right away was where, when I was bartending, here's a good example, you knew when you wanted something from me, okay? Let's say you wanted a beer. Great. You came to my bar top, you said, bartender, I want a beer. Now that gave me an opportunity to go through my beer list and maybe sell you on something besides the typical Coors Light you would drink. People aren't necessarily just coming up to me out of nowhere saying, hey, Josh, I want a house. Okay, that's been the big change that I've noticed from the service industry. People aren't just coming to me. I got to go to the people. So early on, it was important to me to, okay, where can I establish that tabletop? Where can I establish that bar top where people are going to come to me and talk about something that they already want? Real estate, help buying or selling. So that's how I've seen it over these last few years. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities, and I'm not the only one. I'm regularly meeting people who came from the food and beverage industry and just saw real estate as the natural next step.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing it. I think you nailed it right on the head. You always want to take care of your customers, whether you're serving them a meal or serving them some cocktails. It's the same thing. You always strive for that high level of service, especially in the real estate business. So I love it, man.
Absolutely.
And glad you're in the industry and doing very well. So we have some questions ready for Josh here. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So with you being in real estate for 3 years, what's one piece of advice you wish you had received when you first started, and how has that kind of shaped your career so far?
I had fun with this one, and picking your favorite piece of advice, I think as a businessman, is like picking your favorite song, in that, that's going to change based on the day. It's going to change based on how you're feeling, and I don't think it was like, what was the advice that I wish I was given early on? It's what's the advice that I wish I took? And that is, because, a lot of the advice we get is the same stuff. It really is. It's like, how many different ways do I need to hear these little nuggets of wisdom before I finally go, oh, that's what I should be doing? And the whole concept of consistency beats perfection. That's it. I struggled with that. I was always, that's not advice I needed 3 years ago. That's advice I needed 20 years ago. Because I always felt that, like, if I didn't do it right, then I wasn't doing it at all. Not completely, ignoring the fact that, like, the mistakes are how we learn. That we got to fail forward, and that's a huge part of not just real estate but life, And I think, I'm in my 40s now, so in my early adult years, I latched so much onto perfection and not realizing how important consistency was. Consistency is what's going to win the game, and realizing how consistency and perfection aren't the same thing. Okay, so I wish I had latched onto that sooner and realized that really failure is part of it, and making mistakes is part of it, as long as you're learning from it and always moving forward.
That's awesome. And just like you said, this is not only, so I hope you guys are watching at home. I hope y'all are taking notes. This is not just real estate advice. This is day-to-day life advice for
Absolutely.
Everybody, for every industry, whether you're a professional, whether you're a parent, whether you're a student. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Let's move on. Here we go. So can you share a memorable success story? Because I know you've had a lot of great success stories where you helped a client achieve their dream, and how did that affect you, not only in your personal life, but in your professional life?
Yeah, I'm not going to pick one, because I have had I've had a great last few years of being able to help a lot of people move to the area. Okay, a lot of my business has been not just helping people move from out of state, but also within Texas, because San Antonio area still offers a lot of affordability compared to other Texas metropolitan areas. So, I know, when people think of people moving to Texas, it's the Californians. Sure, we're getting them from all over. I want to make sure that everyone knows that Texas, San Antonio especially, is really, really experiencing a huge influx. So what's been really rewarding for me is helping people come to the city and start their new lives. All right. So one of the more enjoyable things I get to do is now see their lives afterwards and what happened after they reach those goals. Okay. It's like, yeah, you wanted the house. Yeah, you wanted to move here, but what did that do for you? Okay. And that's really been the most rewarding thing is now seeing your life after the purchase and seeing how much better your life is now that you came to San Antonio, and knowing that I was part of that. So, Homes for Heroes has helped me do that with not just military. You mentioned that, but we also work with first responders. We work with fire department. We work with the police department. We work with medical field, EMS. And a lot of these guys really, they're not making a lot of money. Let's be honest. So being part of helping them become homeowners, helping that become a reality, that's been really huge too. So I would say that the most memorable success story really is watching people's goals come together, and then getting to keep in touch with them afterwards and seeing how much that changed their life for the positive.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. And isn't it rewarding? I mean, it really makes all of the hard work, the day-to-day that we do, it makes it all worth it. We can have that positive effect. So Absolutely. I love that, man. Thank you. And I know you're going to keep on with that mission and keep making dreams come true. So that's awesome. All right. So in going back to talking about turning these people from these different backgrounds, different occupations, different walks of life, making them into homeowners. What does it mean to you to be an owner of something, whether you own your home, whether you own your brokerage, which like you and I now do with EXP, which is super awesome. We own the company we're flying the flag for, or whether you own your car or to be in charge of your schedule. What does it mean for you to be an owner of something?
Freedom. Really, it's the big freedom. I mean, that really is the American dream, right? That's what people came here to do, is to have something that was their own. And, that's what it means. I get to call the shots. But with great freedom comes great responsibility. Yes. So we have to remember that freedom doesn't necessarily mean free. But,
right.
But I have a lot of pride. This isn't my first rodeo owning something of my own. My family had a restaurant for 6.5 to 7 years. Now, you mentioned Feral Children. I believe Feral Children was my first small business. And, showing up for yourself is a lot different than punching the clock for someone else, and it really does a lot to know that it's yours. So.
For sure. And just like you said, it's one of those things, when you own it, you're in charge of it. So you can do, on the positive side, you can do as much as you want with it, or you can kind of do as little as you want to. So you really have to have that discipline.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, because, if your business is doing great, congratulations. you
right.
did great. your business is doing horrible, go look in the mirror and figure out why,
That's right.
but freedom it's worth it. I have my bad days, and then I think about going back to doing something and punching the clock for someone else, and I go no, because then I give up my freedom.
Right. And just like you said, it's going back, it's about that failing forward.
Right.
If something happens, we examine, learn from it, and keep moving forward. So
right.
I love that, man. Thank you for sharing that. All right, here we go. So coming from the food and beverage, and you kind of touched on it, you were talking to some of your customers, some of your regulars. They knew that you were great in the service industry, but was there more to that story? What really inspired you to get into real estate? And to take it one step further, what inspired you to join EXP and have EXP as your brokerage?
Well, what really inspired me, was being in the service industry for so long and being brainwashed by my clientele. Like, you could be doing something else. I worked at every format from honky tonk to high rise, and someone had to point that out for me. That I started my career out in El Paso, Texas, bartending career out in El Paso, Texas, cracking beers a couple miles away from the border, lucky to make $100 a night in tips. And at the end of my career, I was working in a high rise, 31 floors above, whatever, serving $50 martinis and whatnot. And they're like, dude, look at you. Yeah, you've gotten better over time. Yeah, you've gotten more experience, but you've changed your product and you've commanded a higher check. Now think about leaving this industry and taking those skills somewhere else. I also sobered up 8 years ago, quit drinking. And, I want to tell you something. You quit drinking, eventually you're going to start believing in yourself. It's a cool outcome from the whole experience. And, when I started believing in myself more, that's when I was like, yes, I can walk away from a job, a career I've had for 2 decades, and I can leverage that skill, leverage what I know here into something bigger and better. So that really inspired to reach for something more I knew I was capable. Now, EXP, I didn't start with EXP. I won't mention who I started with, but I did start with another, a larger brokerage, and it made sense at the time. I still say it makes sense at the time because I was coming right out of the pandemic. I really wanted a physical presence to go to. And so at the time, it facilitated exactly what I wanted. However, as I spent more time in the industry, learning about the industry, but not just learning about the industry, learning more about what I needed to support me, EXP was the obvious answer. I'm someone who's constantly on the go. I'm someone who honestly doesn't really need an office. I'm talking to you today in a spare bedroom in my home. There's a guitar amp over here, there's some hats. This is fine for me because I'm not paid to be in an office. None of us real estate agents are. If you're a new agent, remember that. You are not paid to be in an office. Sorry. So, let's remove that distraction. Let's be on the go. Let's be with the people. And EXP really helps me facilitate that. EXP is really an on-demand brokerage. So I can literally be, at a coffee shop and pull up my team meeting and be right there. I can be lifting weights and be, attending a class. And I love that because, it really facilitates my business and how my business has evolved over the last 3 years.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you for sharing. And you're 100% right. I remember even most agents, if you talk to them, most agents, EXP is not their first company.
Right.
Sometimes they've started somewhere else and learned a little bit. And once you finally see the EXP model, it kind of sticks with you. And I remember when I started, the physical office was a big thing. And I remember I would go into the office and I had an agenda that I need to do these 3 to 5 things, whatever they might be. And I would go into the office and I would never get any of them done. Because as soon as I would get into the office, there was, donuts in the break room. And then we start talking to other people. And then we start talking about real estate war stories. And this client was, a handful. And this deal went really well and back and forth. And before you know it, say, well, we're going to go to lunch. And then we'd go to lunch. So I would have to go back to my home office to do my work, and then I started realizing it's like, man, every time I go to the office, I'm not getting anything done. And I'm really not making any money. So, in real estate, when we're out in the field, showing houses, doing listing appointments, meeting people, doing consults, that's when the real magic happens. So, I was right there with you. Thank you for sharing that, man. All right, here we go. Now let's really dig in. Let's dig deep. Coming from your background in the music industry or in the service industry, how has real estate and EXP as a brokerage really changed your life and changed the life for you and your family? What is different about your life now in real estate as opposed to your previous careers?
Right, that's a great question too. And I'm new. I'm still in my first 90 days. I think I'm wrapping that up. So, I'm still experiencing the change. But, when you're in the food and beverage industry, let's go back to that for a second. You're tied to the workplace. We just talked about the office, okay, that's one thing. But when you're in the food and beverage industry, you are tied to the workplace. And I can think of many times where I had to work and I had to go to the restaurant, the bar, whatever, and that's how, no matter what was going on at home, okay, I still had to make that work because that's how I made money. Great example of like how that's different now. My son was sick yesterday, okay, so he had to stay home from school. Well, you know what? Thank you, EXP. I don't have an office to check into anymore, but I was able to do all my work here at home, be with my son. I was able to take him to the doctor's office, and while we're ready, I'm able to get on KD4, get on my CRM, and make sure I got some notes, and make sure that I'm making my touches with my clients there, but still be present with my son, while we're all at the doctor and whatnot. So going back to things I previously touched on and other questions, just being EXP being an accessible brokerage, being mobile, being cutting edge, has really changed my life because it means that I'm not tied to the workplace anymore. I'm not tied to the office anymore. Okay. And I love that. And I know that this is a model that I'm going to be able to grow with.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, cool. So we've talked about a lot of the deep stuff, moving into the real estate industry, changing your field of work, all that really good stuff. But let's talk about something cool. Let's talk about something a little bit on a lighter note. If you could have dinner with any person of influence, whether they're here or not here anymore, who would it be and why?
Oh man, I got a secret about me. I'm a little hippie at heart, and when I saw this question, I had a big smile. Jerry Garcia.
All right. That's awesome.
He is not a name that comes up when people think of businessmen, successful businessmen, and I understand why. The imagery and everything that kind of goes associated with the Grateful Dead doesn't necessarily align with successful businessmen. But when you think about a dude who was an Army vet who came out of the service and started teaching guitar and bluegrass instruments in a local shop, and just met a bunch of people, networked, and then was able to create something and huge, to the point to where it lived on. I mean, he's been dead now since 1995, and this thing is like still going on. But that's the goal. That was his whole mission. When you look at interviews with him, he shares all these nuggets that you can just take out of context and apply to your life and apply to your business. One of them is this isn't about me. But the band wasn't about him. It was about being something bigger than he was and bigger than they were, that could live on without him. And that's what he did. The Grateful Dead are a brand. They're not a band anymore. Half those guys are dead. and they're still playing. They had a residency at the Sphere in Vegas. And they're able to live on as a brand. Another thing, he wasn't concerned about being good at everything. He wasn't concerned about, hey, I gotta know how to play every instrument. He was more, these are the things I know how to do, and I need to double down on that. Whatever I'm good at, that's what I need to be really good at. So instead of, like us agents who are like, oh, I want to, and I catch myself doing it. I want to know residential. I want to know commercial. I want to know land. No, dude, you don't need to know everything. You just need to take the stuff that you really know and double down on that. All right.
That is so cool. I mean, you just inspired me. I want to do some more research on Jerry Garcia and his life. I mean, I'm really interested to learn more about it. So thank you for sharing that.
I could have
and I'm sure that would be an amazing conversation. My gosh. So I love that. That's a great choice. Hey, well, Josh, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, out of your busy schedule to join us here at the Agent Experience. Go ahead and let everyone know, how can they find you online? How can they contact you? If there's any other little nuggets you want to throw out there, go for it, man. How can we find you?
Yeah, I'm on all the major social handles. So you'll find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Joshua Gamble Realtor, joshuagamble.exprealty.com.
And what's your tagline, man? You got to share your tagline. I love it.
Come and buy it.
There you go. Hey, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of the Agent Experience. We talk about the stories behind the agents. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Y'all take care.
Thanks for having me.